We are honored and delighted to have His Eminence Cardinal William Levada here today. He is the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. I was practicing that all morning.
You did an excellent job.
And it's a very long and fancy title for being theologian-in-chief of the Vatican. Cardinal Levada is the highest ranking and most important American in the history of the Vatican. He was the Archbishop of Portland, and then the Archbishop of San Francisco, and he was handpicked by the Pope to assume the Pope's prior job. I was struck by something you said earlier at lunch about something that was a little bit unexpected with Benedict's elevation, is that, as you said, he seems to really enjoy being the Pope, and that you yourself said that it's a momentous weight on someone's shoulders, and yet he seems to be wearing it very lightly.
I think that's true. I mean, those of us who had known him some time knew that he had asked Pope John Paul several years before to let him return at age 75, which is the classic retirement age, or at least almost, depending upon how long it takes to fulfill your job. And the Pope said no. He said, no, I need you here, and so forth. But he wanted to go back and write his books and, in a sense, return to the professorial life. But to see him take on a job that required him to be on a public stage practically around the clock, and to learn how to do that with serenity and joy, that was a surprise to me, and I'm delighted that he does. But I mean, I mentioned how naturally he greets people now with his arms raised like this. Well, I mean, he had to learn that. But he told me at one time, he says, I have a new job now, and I have to learn the rules and the needs of this new job. And he's just really remarkable in being able to do it at his age. He's got a lot of great preparation, so I thank God for him.
Well, you do it pretty well yourself.
I mean, I think it's probably safe to say that not just Catholics, but a lot of non-Catholic Americans were much more fascinated and impressed than they ever thought that they could be or have been with the Holy Father's treatment of the sexual abuse scandal. We have had clerical abuse scandals here before, but what made this one different and what made it big was the feeling that the hierarchy was actually knowledgeable and involved in some places. Is there a possibility that some of the hierarchy will be held to account for this? And what would be the arguments against such a thing? I
know that there are priests, that there are bishops who have said to me and to others that if they had known then what they know now, they would have acted differently. But many bishops acted on the basis of psychological reports and therapeutic reports that were also representative of a science and a discipline that was not really on top of the various aspects of this. And so it has been a learning experience for bishops. Bishops, of course, there have been a couple who themselves were guilty of sex abuse of minors who have been, once it has come out, that they have simply been removed from their jobs. About the Pope, let me go back to that point now. For years, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith had been responsible for a group of specified sins of clergy that affected the faith of people, and there were sins like profaning the Eucharist, violating the seal of confession, things that were called particularly grave sins. And the Holy Father, at the request of then Cardinal Ratzinger, after consultation, placed the sin of sexual abuse of minors among these most grave sins, and gave the competency to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which had them for these other issues. Cardinal Ratzinger, as Cardinal, set down some policies and practices that have helped to deal with that and will continue to help deal with that, not only in the United States, but in other countries throughout the world. That wasn't your question, of course. Your question was, will bishops be sanctioned? I would want to see case and I would want to see the situations that we would be talking about. I personally do not accept that there is a broad base of bishops who are guilty of aiding and abetting pedophiles, and if I thought there were or knew of them, then I would certainly talk to the Pope about what could be done about it. But I am not aware of that, and I'm aware of bishops who have admitted to making mistakes, but those, it seems to me, are mistakes grounded in taking counsel that didn't turn out to be good advice.
Your Eminence, can you talk a little bit more about the Vatican or the Church's relationship with Islam, specifically about the evolution in that relationship with this Pope as opposed to the previous Pope? In what ways this Pope's view is different from his predecessor, and as the chief theologian, what your views are on the subject, and how in these past 3 years this relationship has evolved?
I don't see a difference not a net difference between Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul. I think that the interreligious dialogue desired by the Second Vatican Council back in the 1960s has moved ahead. I think that the question of terrorism has been a new factor that all of us have had to deal with in one way or another. I mean, after 9/11, I was a part of an interreligious group in our community in San Francisco that included imams from our small Muslim community, and they were pleading with us, the religious leaders of Protestants and Jewish and Catholic communities, to speak out and to say that because you were Muslim, that didn't mean you were a terrorist, because this was the mentality that was coming through at that time. And I think we've moved, thanks be to God, well beyond that. But I think that Pope Benedict sees this as a question, to get back to the question about reason, I think he sees this as a conviction that all of us, no matter what our religious convictions are people of reason, or can and should be, or have the innate ability to be, and it's on that level that we need to reach out to dialogue with each other, because we can also dialogue about our faith, and we will have to do that, but there is a commonality to our humanity that brings forward questions that all of us need to be interested in to guarantee societies that can live together in peace. And I think his tendency tends to say that's the area that we must begin our dialogue on, and I think he's correct.
Well, on behalf of Time and all of us here, I just want to thank you, Cardinal Levada, for being with us today.
Thanks for your invitation, Rick.
Intelligence and humanity shone through all this whole time. It was really an honor and pleasure to have you here.
Well, it's nice to be with all of you. Thank you.